And now we're back to doing Sonic the Hedgehog videos, the thing people have been hyped for since May. Today we're talking about the 2006 release, Sonic Riders. Specifically, I'll be talking about the GameCube version, but it did also drop on the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC. But since it's been a while since we were last here, I figured I'd talk about the retrospective as a whole for a brief moment. I didn't want to leave on the note of Sonic Rivals a couple months ago, but I was left with no choice because I wanted to do the Ratchet & Clank videos when I did. Now, before we get to the 2010 Sonic games, we're just left with two games, Sonic Riders and Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. For reasons I'll explain in the future, free Riders will get covered later, just stay tuned for that. Anyway, let's get back to talking about the original Sonic Riders from 2006. This game is a picture-perfect example of how I was as a kid, or rather, just in general. When I got this game on the PS2 back in the day, I also had like Gran Turismo something or other. I don't even know, I never played it. I mean, it's racing with cars. I don't want to play that. But Sonic on hoverboards? Sign me up. I played the multiplayer of this game a lot way back when. To be honest, I didn't even know it had a story mode for the longest time, because when you boot up the game, the first thing in the menu is the normal race option. This is how you access the multiplayer. The story mode is beneath that. You could then ask me, why didn't you just use your eyeballs and read the words on the screen? To that I will say, I don't know, it was 2006 or whatever. I might be the only person with this experience, but I can say it was a really cool surprise to find that this game had a story mode after having already played it a lot. Speaking of which, the story is set up similarly to Sonic Adventure 2, where you have the hero side story and the New Babylon side of the story. I can explain it in a moment. What's different from SA2 is that only the hero side is unlocked at the start. The other side needed to be unlocked by beating the hero side. I always felt like the devs of SA2 intended you to play the hero side story first anyway, so it doesn't bother me in Riders. The plot begins with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles looking for a lost Chaos Emerald when these three goons emerge from a window on hoverboards called Extreme Gear. These folks have stolen the Chaos Emerald, this being a new group of rivals introduced for this game. The Babylon Rogues, consisting of Jet the Hawk, Wave the Swallow, and Storm the Albatross, each serving as a counter for the characters on Team Sonic like the dynamic from Sonic Adventure 2. The Rogues get away, but the next day, Sonic and Co learn that Eggman is starting the X-World Grand Prix with the Rogues already having entered it. Entering the competition being the heroes' chance to get back at their new enemies. The price of admission is 1 Chaos Emerald per person. And yeah, that doesn't set off a single red flag in anyone's mind. Spoiler alert, it was another Eggman scheme to get the 7 emeralds and the treasure hidden on Babylon Garden. Yeah, didn't see that one coming. Having said that, I find this story really entertaining. Having a big cast of characters is part of that. You just get to see them bounce off each other in ways I find entertaining, like Knuckles getting angrily confused by Tails explaining how extreme gears work. There are a lot of cartoony staples and sound effects that are put to good use in these cutscenes, which further adds to their enjoyment. Helps the overall story that it follows a fairly predictable but effective structure for how to do a Sonic rival, as Jet starts off way better than Sonic at extreme gear usage, but you almost beat him at the end until he cheats to win.
Ah, the dirt suits you so well!
Now you really want to rub it in his face in the final race. Doing that unlocks the Babylon story, and here you see the same plot from their perspective. It even begins before the hero side version like in SA2. But now we get extra insight into what was going on. In the hero side story, you just see Wave completely tear down Tails' work, but in the Babylon story, you see that she only did that for show, when in reality she was actually impressed by Tails' gear craftsmanship. Hence why she put a bomb on it, informing what you already saw in the hero side story at the end. After the race at Sky Road, you also get what would amount to a last story segment in the other games, but it's just after the last race, where the treasure of Babylon Garden is blocked by a giant genie that goes... You play as Sonic one last time to beat it, and once you do, Eggman shows up to claim the treasure, which turns out to be a carpet.
Undoubtedly, this carpet will be in high demand from all around the world, but what's this? No way! I went to the trouble of holding the World Grand Prix for this? I can't believe I just wasted my time for this piece of junk!
Yeah, his whole plan was a waste of time. What a goon. Now, I just went into why I enjoy the story, but it's certainly not executed to perfection, which starts with the animations. It's certainly fine, I mean, lip sync is in order, models are okay, it's just that things look a little stiff when compared to what Ratchet and Jack were doing, also having some clipping issues too. Having just played the old Ratchet games again makes this pretty obvious. Sonic character proportions are hard to work with. I don't think it's something that can't be overcome, but take this part where Amy winks at Sonic, for example. This just reminds you of how the Una-eye look some of these characters have makes expressions like this a little awkward in animation. But the biggest problem I think the story suffers from is the fact that of all the 4Kids era games, this has easily the worst vocal performance of any of them.
Oh, new competition!
Like I said, I like these voices for most of the characters, but the direction just feels so off and wooden.
That's cool! Sonic!
Making a lot of cutscenes more cringeworthy than they probably were intended to be.
Even without wings, I can still fly! Right?
And then you have Jason Griffith as Jet, and
He may be the fastest creature on the ground, but in the air, with me and my extreme gear, he's just a joke!
why would they have him sound like this? Who talks like that? Anyway, the acting isn't helped by the weak translation. You won't have any trouble interpreting what's going on, but
Not just a race, but a special race to see who's the fastest.
what is that line? A special race to see who's the fastest, as opposed to a regular race. When discussing the larger game, the graphics are nothing to write home about either. I get you're supposed to be whizzing by the areas as fast as possible, but I can't help but notice how bad some of the textures have held up, using really low poly or just straight up pixelated assets. Compared to something like Jack X, this game just kind of feels low budget in its presentation. By 6th gen standards, I don't think it's the worst of the worst. I mean, it has full cutscenes after all, but it's noticeable that this game has aged visually in a way that I don't think Sonic Heroes even has. The CG cutscenes aren't particularly numerous, but the ones we get are great. I just love action-heavy Sonic cutscenes, so I'm already sold on that when watching the intro, but the amount of detail put into the models is just fantastic. Love this shot in the ending, it just looks so cool. Which describes the whole aesthetic pretty well. Hideaki Moriya and Yuji Uekawa served as the art directors for this game, creating a new art style instead of just using the traditional one from the Adventure and Advance games that Uekawa had already done. The most defining aspect of this art style being the solid color with lined shading and this cool chalk-looking outline around the characters. Just look at Sonic, who's entirely shaded in this dark blue. That kind of shading is making its way into some of the newer Sonic art, and like I said, I think it looks great. Although my heart still lies with that adventure style, which we did get official art of the Babylon Rogues in eventually. But back to the Riders look, it's just really slick and colorful when seeing these characters together. Just look at the Japanese box art. This game being another case of whoever does the localization just thinking Americans obviously don't want this stylized box art, they want CG renders. But regardless, I've always loved the opening movie that's animated in this 2D style. I mean, it just has such confidence in itself, watching the core characters race while doing cool tricks to this banging music. Putting some character in it as well, like when Storm attacks Tails and Sonic just goes back for him. What a lad this Sonic guy is. I mentioned how banging the opening music Sonic Speed Riders was, and so I figured I should also mention that it and the closing credits, Catch Me If You Can, were both done by Rumblebee, who did the soundtrack for Sonic and the Secret Rings, which was also a bop and a half. The soundtrack of Riders in general is just good to listen to while tearing up the racetracks. The only issue I could ever take with it just being that I want more of it, but I can talk about that later. Now, the title says that this game is the perfect Sonic spin-off, which then brings up the discussion of what I mean by that. Developers can make whatever games they want to with whatever IPs, but looking back at the history of Sonic, I have to say that I think the kart racer was never a super strong fit for the series. Mario and Crash obviously do it, so you'd want Sonic to compete with that. However, I just think a game like Sonic Riders makes more sense. I mean, Sonic on a snowboard has been a thing since Ice Cap Zone in Sonic 3. When Sonic Riders came out, Sonic Adventure's too cool for school attitude was still the thing the whole franchise revolved around, and a spin-off with hoverboards where you pull off sick tricks is such a great fit. To summarize Sonic Riders, you pick whichever character you want, and the goal is to beat the competition in 3 laps around the track. Yeah, I know that's kind of obvious, but you have to start somewhere, okay? While racing, your extreme gear has this energy bar on the side of the screen that when depleted will see you running to find the nearest pit stop to fill your board with energy. Pressing the B button will allow you to boost, something that will consume more of your energy than just riding normally would have. To increase the gauge's maximum capacity, you have to collect 30 and then 60 rings, which will give your boost attack more power. But if you get hit, you go back to level 1. To fill up your gauge, there are these pit stops I just mentioned, but I try not to rely on these because they'll stop you in place for a few seconds, giving the other racers valuable time to get ahead of you. If you ever get behind, you can rely on the turbulence generated by the leading player's board and do tricks on it and use that as a chance to catch up. Like I said, this game just has very interesting mechanics. Most racers have items the players in the back can use to get in the front. Even Jack X is the obnoxiously undodgeable Peacemaker item. But Riders just has its own systems entirely. A lot of good risk versus reward gameplay in there, like the boost system I just went into, or even how the levels begin with these gates you have to run through. Hit it too early and you get shocked and put in last place, but if you do it too late, you'll probably be towards the back of the group anyway. Run at it with just the right timing and the game will have unbelievable appear on the screen as you just start the race at the top of the pile. But the overall goal of the game is to keep your energy meter up by performing tricks off of jump ramps. Here, another Sonic Adventure era concept is put to great use in this game. the ranking system from Sonic Adventure 2. When you land after pulling tricks, the game will score you on it. The higher your rank upon landing, the more energy you'll gain. To get the top rank, X, you have to jump really high in the air and pull off consistent and varied tricks from the start of the jump to the landing, and you have to make a perfect landing. If you fail the landing, you get a C rank, which doesn't refill any of your energy meter, and you just killed off your momentum while doing it. Every time you hit a jump ramp, you just get a hit of dopamine because you want to charge up your jump just the right amount while also carrying enough speed into the jump to be able to do faster tricks. And then you really hope you can make the landing. It's so rewarding to do each and every time. Although I never got these certain ramps that don't have the same flow to them as the regular ones. I know that sounds weird, but take Ice Factory for example. You get this big ramp at the beginning, but then there's this other one right after that where you can charge your jump just the same, but the tricks will be slower and floatier. These floatier ramps are all over the game in every track, and I just don't know what's the deal with them. But that's not a big issue. The trick ranking system alone is why I find this game so fun, but there's still a lot of other stuff to mess around with as well. The game has a pretty decent roster of characters, and they're divided into 3 categories: speed, fly, and power. Something that had become a staple of the series at this point following Sonic Heroes and Sonic Advance 3. Speed-type characters like Sonic, Jet, or Shadow can take advantage of grind rail shortcuts where you jump on a rail and go above the track itself. You have to press the jump button a second time to actually land on the rail though, so keep that in mind. Fly-type characters like Tails, Wave, or Cream will reach these large ramp shortcuts and they'll automatically fly off of them and go through the rings in the sky that will increase their speed in the air for a short bit. And power-type characters like Knuckles, Storm, or Dr. Eggman will bash through certain obstacles to get a shortcut. The biggest difference between these types is their shortcuts, and each one might be better suited for different tracks. Like how I did a really bad job on Night Chase as Jet because these police cars driving through the street, but as a power-type character you can just plow through them. So you need to experiment to decide which formation works best for each track. But each one has a dedicated shortcut on each track so nobody feels left out. Whenever I play this game, I just stick to Sonic and Shadow, so my routes just revolve around their shortcuts in most of the tracks. All this warrants a discussion around what I think is the biggest talking point surrounding Sonic Riders, and that is its accessibility. Sonic Riders has a lot going on from a mechanics point of view, but for most players that just doesn't really land because the game doesn't teach basically any of it in an organic fashion. With a game like Crash Team Racing, I'm sure there's a skill ceiling, but when playing it for a video in 2020 for the first time, I jumped into it with ease. In the case of Sonic Riders, like I just said, you have to know to press jump a second time to actually land on the grind rails with speed characters. The game tries to ease you into it since the first 2 races in the story mode only require you having gotten 3rd place or higher to progress, but clearly that doesn't account for the larger issue. I think there definitely is something to this argument that the game doesn't teach its mechanics well. However, I'm not bothered by that because, I don't know, I've been playing this since 2006 or whatever, so it's just not something that gets in the way of my ability to have fun with it. However, this problem does need to be addressed. Just when making this video, there are mechanics I learned about for the first time. By watching the tutorial video in the options menu, I learned by pressing L and R at the same time you'll toss wind at your enemies, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that one. Or look at some of the shortcuts reached by jumping high enough off of a ramp. Sky Road is one of the hardest tracks in the game. Whenever I reach this point in the Babylon story, I get my ass kicked because some of the racers can just reach this high ledge that I can't. When talking to the boys, Jeb is just like, yeah, if you hold down the analog stick, you jump higher from ramps. And I didn't know that. I tried it out, and now I can't not get first place in this race. King K then tells me about holding forward on the analog stick to go further and not reaching certain shortcuts. Who knew? I'm not trying to say I'm an expert, so therefore my learning new things is a con. I'm just saying it's definitely worth mentioning that things that feel pretty basic are just kinda things you have to know, either by experience or someone telling you it. The kind of thing that definitely takes away from a game in a critical sense, but not in an enjoyment sense because I think the game is really fun. Looking past what it takes to get there, this game has a decently high skill ceiling, and those are my favorite kinds of games. The ones where learning and applying its mechanics are part of the reward you get by playing the game. Think of why I praise games like MGS3 or DMC5, it's the same kind of thing. Pulling off the tricks of the analog stick is never not satisfying. It feels like you have control over the pace of the game, and when you're good at it, it feels good to play. Look at the leads I was pulling over my opponents. I don't know how else to say this, that's just satisfying. But like I alluded to earlier, I just think there isn't enough of it. Sonic Riders has 5 tracks by default: Metal City, Splash Canyon, Egg Factory, Green Cave, and Sand Ruins. You unlock Babylon Garden at the end of the Hero Side story and the Digital Dimension at the end of the Babylon story. The Babylon campaign sees you playing through nighttime or inverted versions of the Hero Side tracks, like instead of Metal City, it's Night Chase. Instead of Egg Factory, a lava level, you get Ice Factory. These tracks are all different, but they reuse assets from other stages to cut down the time needed to come up with new aesthetics. This is fine, but I just think Sonic Riders doesn't have enough core content, a similar issue to Sonic R, actually. While making this video, I kept coming back to the game to get more footage of races just because it's fun to play, but there aren't that many tracks to work with, so the footage just becomes more of the same. This is why they put in extra modes and unlockable characters, such as Shadow, Rouge, Cream, and Eggman. Shadow and Eggman introducing new gameplay types to the game as Shadow rides hover skates and Eggman has a moped. You can then allow the other characters to use these vehicles if you think it's cool. I usually give Shadow an unlockable board. I mean, his being on hover skates kind of feels like cheating. It's like the Shadow version of the ancient meme, why doesn't Sonic just run on foot when that's faster? Speaking of which, you get rings for completing races and you can spend them on new boards. This is pretty tough to work with because the stats are barely comprehensible to me, and apparently the stats are all lies anyway, so that's nice. Playing as Dr. Eggman in this game is a riot. I mean, you're leading the pack doing tricks as Eggman riding a moped, and Omochow, the announcer, is taking it completely seriously.
Eggman has just established a new track record.
You can turn off that announcing dialogue in the options menu if you wish, but I could take it either way, which also goes for Jack X and Ratchet Deadlocked. Weirdly, Dr. Eggman is voiced by Mike Pollock in this game like usual.
I've had many, many dreadful encounters with this pest.
But the in-game grunts for Eggman are reused clips from Dean Bristow for the adventure games.
Do you think you can beat me?
Was Mike Pollock just busy this week and they couldn't get him back to do some grunts? I don't know, it's very weird of them to do. But back to the unlockables. You can also unlock characters from other Sega properties like Knights and Super Monkey Ball and Sega-themed stages. Super Sonic's even playable if you clear enough missions. New stages are definitely good, but unlocking them with missions would take a really long time. I say would because, you might notice this footage is on Dolphin and not my Wii, like the clearly 480p clip on the screen right now. Getting a gold rank on the first mission in Storm's list alone took countless retries. You need to be pixel perfect in order to get that, which I found satisfying in a way, but not something I want to keep doing for hours with the other missions. I mean, I could barely jump off of this ramp as Tails, which made me throw in the towel for doing missions. Again, it's more content, but not content that comes in the form of racing on new stages, which is all I really want. Clearly other people enjoy this game and want to get more content out of it, because it has a pretty devoted fan base who work hard on modding the game through things like Sonic Riders Tournament Edition, a fan-made mod that allows you to play the game online, or the new Sonic Riders DX, which enhances the visuals and makes gameplay tweaks. All things I could talk about in the next video, though. Point being that this game has a rather unique appeal and people want more of it. As far as spin-offs are concerned, Sonic Riders gives me a lot of what I want. An entertaining story, really good art direction, boppin' music, and mechanics that I can just keep coming back to again and again and having fun with. Every now and again I'll just pop in Riders and play through the Grand Prix and have a good time because of its unique gameplay. It captures all that great adventure era energy into one game, and for that, I think it's really cool. This is one of my favorite Sonic games for all these reasons, but it's not perfect, so it's not really a game I think of when I think of best Sonic games. But it's definitely one that I really enjoy, which could have been improved a lot with a good sequel. Sonic Riders as a concept did get another go 2 years later with Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, which I will talk about in the next video. Until then, thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.